Sure, sure. Let's see. I think Leslie started the recording. Um, I'll click on here to share screen. I think I have the rights.
Yeah.
And Rock, let me know. I'm going to
Okay.
share this. Do you see a stay connected?
Yes. See
Okay,
the,
excellent.
there you go. Perfect. Hey, well,
All right.
welcome everybody. Um, Glad you made some time to be part of the conversation this morning. I'm Rock Jenkins, and a recent graduate of the MAOL program at Lewis University and a student ambassador. And I'm really pleased to help facilitate this conversation this morning with Dr. Mike Cherry. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of having Mike for one of his classes, I would describe him as the synchronous classes go, where you're online with each other. He's kind of the Jimmy Fallon of
Really?
online course facilitators. He's a lot of fun. He mixes things up, and he's very bright. So he is, in my view, the Jimmy Fallon of Lewis University's online classes.
Thanks for that, Rock.
Does that work for you, Mike?
Well, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that, but I'll go with it. Maybe I'll put out a corny joke or two. You never know what'll come out of this.
I haven't heard any musical talents from you, so we'll keep away from that. Anyway, this is one of the ongoing conversations that Lewis is sponsoring, and this one is really centered on, as we get back to work as leaders from this COVID experience we're all having. What role can emotional intelligence play in helping us to be successful in re-engaging with our organizations and with the people we lead? So the objectives today are to invite us to reflect and maybe give us some action steps to take with our leadership, and really to talk about how we can use emotional intelligence to balance empathy with the need that every organization has to get results and achieve goals. So with that in mind, a couple of rules up front. If you could stay on mute, that would be super. I will be monitoring the chat function. So if you have a comment or two or a question, that's great. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question, that's fine too. But stay on mute until you do that. And if we could have the pleasure of seeing your faces using video, that would be awesome as well. So with that in mind, Mike, we talked, you and I, a little bit about this topic beforehand, and you talked about a model that you've had some experience with. So I'd love to have the start of the conversation. Maybe you could provide us with an overview of this model, and then maybe we could ask you some questions and take some questions on.
Yeah,
Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Rob. And for those who are on the call, Rock and I, in our conversations, we realized that through a variety of these types of seminars, we've hit emotional intelligence a couple of times through our original Stay Connected series. And then we had a earlier webinar, which was around emotional intelligence. And we hit some of the big ones, like the Goleman model, Daniel Goleman, the Baron, and I think we did Slove and Mayer in another one where we thought about the big three. And there's another model that I actually used in my dissertation research, which was around emotional intelligence. And it was from Friedman. And as Rock and I were talking, I thought, well, this might be a really good model. Has a lot of the foundations of these other models that we've gone through before in previous webinars, but it might be a particularly valuable one as we go back into this new world of work, and as things maybe open up a little bit more and we're going back into the office, and there's some hesitancy on are people coming back or not coming back, and what does this new world of work look like? And that was particularly helpful because it hit some of those core elements. We have to know ourselves, and so Friedman suggests that there are 3 pursuits, the first being this know yourself, and this is this self-awareness. We're recognizing patterns and behaviors, and it kind of just who am I? What am I feeling? What am I about as I go back in as a leader or employee or part of this larger organization? And so the competencies here that Friedman suggests that define this pursuit of know yourself is this emotional literacy and then recognizing patterns. And as Rock knows in being in the coaching program, and I see a few others that are part of that coaching program, that's really one of the things as coaches we work on with members and clients, coachees, the people we have the pleasure of working with, is what are those patterns of behavior that we have? And so knowing ourselves is the first. And the second, which I thought was, this is the one for me that I thought this might be a great model. It's choosing, making choices. We know something now, what do we do with it? What's that self-management and directions? And we have consequential thinking, we navigate emotions, we engage in this intrinsic motivation. And this great one here, exercise optimism, which in our particular news world right now, I don't hear a lot of optimism. And so how do we perhaps make those conscious choices as we go back? And finally, the last one here is now of give yourself. Daily choices with a higher sense of purpose. How are we connecting with others? How are we using empathy? How are we pursuing noble goals and encouraging and motivating and inspiring others to also pursue those noble goals? Because as we're coming back, we have empathy and with the, kind of a capital A and D, and organizational goals. What do we hope to achieve of these very important priorities that we have, very meaningful priorities of the organizations in which we work? So that's roughly the model. That was very quick, but nevertheless, that is roughly the model. So Friedman suggests 3 pursuits, and then we have these different competencies within the pursuit. So we become more, we start general, and then there's some more action planning and maybe more tactical pieces we can do and behaviors we can enact as leaders. Does that help to kind of frame a bit?
It does.
Okay.
I've got an initial question for you related
Sure.
to the, I'm wondering how Friedman and how you think about this from a pursuit standpoint. From the standpoint, are these sequential? I mean, is it know yourself, choose yourself, give yourself, or they happen simultaneously? Any thoughts on that?
That's a wonderful question. It certainly lays out that way, doesn't it? It's kind of like, okay, I know something, that I'm going to make a choice. And then it's really the giving of oneself within that. So it kind of seems like it would naturally flow there. But I think many times we make choices, we really learn more about ourselves as the reaction of those choices or the engagement, the interaction we have with others. So, Rock, I would like to think of this as less linear, kind of less of this and maybe more of this. It's maybe a bit more circular. We can kind of enter into different areas. Maybe sometimes if we really really jump into what we think is a noble goal, well, we maybe really learn a little bit more about ourselves. Maybe we'll learn more about our ability to be resilient, grit, the stick-to-itiveness, or, oh, that may have been a bad choice. And so we adjust and we make some other choices. So I think a wonderful question. It does lay out in a linear fashion, but it's my thought that it's probably a little bit more circular or cyclical. Is that? No, circular, more circular in nature.
Right. Yeah, and cyclical is in the comments here, so folks
Good.
agree with that. And I can certainly see some of this model being used in my marriage the last 25 years, some choices I've made and how I've come to better know myself.
Or being told
through my wife's reaction. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Good connection here on your anniversary day.
It's been a cyclical experience, that's for sure. So another question for you, and I invite others to chime in or ask questions on the chat, but another question for you, Mike. How have you used this model or seen it in play in your leadership, in your work?
Well, certainly you think as leading others. Much of my leadership has been around with faculty development and awareness there. At least that's where I initially go. when you asked that question in my own leadership. And, certainly the navigating emotions of both myself and then with others as they come. And as so many students on the line, something doesn't go well in class, we have maybe a harsh review from the students is, what do we, how do we take some of the emotion out of that, recognize it and honor that emotion. And again, using that and, capital A and D, and what choices do we make for next time, right? So in what ways do we improve? In what ways does this feedback have validity? And so kind of thinking of how to take some of that, use that emotion positively, certainly is one way that I've seen it, certainly used in my own leadership and teaching for that matter as well. And, certainly giving of ourselves in leadership of pursuing noble goals, important goals, defining that vision, articulating it. I often think of this pursuit of noble goals with that, I guess it's a parable. Someone can help me with that, where there's the 3 bricklayers, and many of us have heard that. The first, I'm just laying some bricks, and then you kind of move down the wall or wherever, down the sidewalk, and the next guy, hey, well, I'm building this wall. And then this third says, I'm building a cathedral. And so there's that, how do we connect people and ourselves to this pursuit of these very important and meaningful goals. So I'll stop there, and it'd be great to get some insight from others of how they might see this playing out in their own leadership and as we return to work.
And I'd love to hear that too. And a couple comments in the chat. Di says it's self-empowerment. And, when I look at that comment from Di and then look at the model, I mean, it really is about taking control. It's the opportunity to have some control in the process. So definitely recognize that. And then here's a question from Marie. How can we use this model to help our teammates feel better about returning to work? Any thoughts on that?
Well, that's a great question. And that earlier comment, so wonderful around making choices, where, perhaps we feel that so much, and rightly so, we were essentially as a society told, you're staying home from work. And now we're maybe moving a little bit out of that, where companies are saying, well, if you want, and governments are saying, if you want, you can start. So automatically now we're maybe getting a little bit more control back, right? Where it can make some choices. And certainly as I'm working with some clients, I'm seeing companies realize that this virtual experience wasn't so bad. It was pretty good. So, maybe we can have more of this flexible work schedule. People are working from home or not, where before, hey, you need to be in the office, and that's where, because we think that's where we're going to be most productive. So there's more of this choice moving and making those choices. So great on that first comment. Rock, could you repeat that second question? I kind of got on a soapbox there. And the question was...
It was, how can we use this model to help our teammates feel better about returning to work?
Excellent. Well, certainly understanding, there's empathy here, both in the give of ourselves and then helping us within the know of ourselves, of recognizing where people are. Where are they in this? Some folks, not a chance I'm going back to the office, but if I can still work from home. But just recognizing where those are and helping folks understand that. And if we think of noble goals, what are our pursuits? What are our vision? What are we striving for, reaching for? That sometimes helps people feel better. I'm coming back to something where I have an important role and responsibility in that. So often in team development work that I've been able to had the pleasure of conducting, the 2 things that I hear most often that teams would like is more clarity around roles and responsibilities and how those contribute to that larger vision. And also, as a third piece, what is that larger vision? So understanding the vision, what we hope to achieve, certainly meeting people where they're at, and having an understanding of that. I think that would help in this feel better about coming back. We're blending that community, that association. Certainly at Lewis, one of the terms we would use is association, with the pursuit of the goals that we have. I hope that helps a little bit on that question. And would love to hear other comments from others around that, of how this model may help in the company.
Yeah, let's open it up either on chat or maybe
Yeah.
online here with us by audio and video. What thoughts do the rest of you folks have about how we can use this model to help our teammates feel better about returning to work? Understanding absolutely that there are a gazillion different circumstances out there and situations, and you know, everybody's carrying their own baggage as it relates to this situation and their personal circumstances. So what thoughts do you have? Let's open it up.
Hey, Rock, I've got another one here on that, if you don't mind.
Okay.
This, in our choose ourselves, we have consequential thinking as one of those core competencies. More detail on that is evaluating the costs and benefits of the choices. And so perhaps laying those things out for folks. You know, are there requirements at the job? Is it going to be, you can be online or from home forever? Or we have a phased return of some sort, but this just being transparent around what are those and the reasons behind the choices that are being made. So when I think of cost benefit, I often think of the reasons behind. And so being transparent in that and clear in that articulation of what those are certainly can help. And if there are options, what are those options and what does it mean? What does it mean?
So here's a question from Leslie. If Mike's consulting work indicates that company employees mention clarity of roles and goals for teams, how can we use EI to help make that more clear? Oh, and then she says, I think you touched on that just now.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. You know, certainly as we think of a main component of emotional intelligence, and thanks, Leslie. That's a great question.
Well, I think, yeah, you know, and certainly I think transparency and vulnerability have never been more important in this environment, because there is so much room for people to get information from a variety of sources that can create suspicion and chip away at confidence in the organization and leadership. And so, you know, the transparency and the vulnerability are just so super important.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick on somebody here, my buddy David, because he's such an insightful guy. I learned something new from him and valuable every time I talk to him. But I'm kind of wondering, David, what your thoughts are, what your insights are about what we've been talking about. What comes to mind?
Yeah, I just you know, I don't have a lot to add. I would say it's a time to, you know, really know yourself. And I think the piece for me that I'm thinking about is, because I know myself, that doesn't mean I necessarily know you. And I think it's a little even tougher now to interact, because we're doing this over, you know, a media that isn't really totally useful in understanding body language and emotion all the way, right? We can get a conversation going, but we don't know everything that's behind it. So how do we think about, suppose I think that I know myself well and I'm ready to go back, and I've mitigated all the risks in my mind and I'm good, but that's me. The person next to me or the people that work with or for me, you know, that's probably not the case for them. And now it doesn't give me the authority to go and pose what I've discovered for myself on them. I have to meet them where they are and work through a lot of the issues that have been shared and Mike has been sharing. So I think we got to be careful to make sure that we're keeping others as much a priority as we are ourselves as we try to walk through this return process.
That's a great point, David. The outward focus here, in really understanding, as we've kind of mentioned, where people are at, is critical. Here's a comment from Di that's got, thank you, David. Here's a comment from Di that's got some insight as well. Many are going to feel as if they are starting a new job again. Leaders might want to integrate this model into a form of orientation to let people feel that they still have choices. Yes, we've all changed, new habits, new emotions, etc. That's a great point. A lot of people are probably feeling like they're starting a brand new job.
Yeah, that's an intriguing point. I hadn't thought of that as, kind of coming back. I suppose because so often, for us in our program here at Lewis, we've just kind of continued as we always have. We do so much online anyways. And so I have more coworkers that kind of come around, and these little tiny bodies don't observe social distancing, these little tiny coworkers I have in my house. But, that's been the biggest difference. And so that's intriguing that people are coming back and it feels like a new, but both in a very optimistic way, exercising optimism. How cool is that? And you think of any time we started a new job, for most of us, that's, wow, this is a great opportunity, right? This is optimism. And so maybe we can seize upon that a little bit to help, although we have a little bit of the apprehension here, given all the risks that could be occurring. Interesting.
So we've got 7 or 8 more minutes here, okay. Mike. I've got 2 questions for you, and then of course, if anybody else has anything, that would be awesome. But one of the things that I've thought about is that the pendulum has really swung from a leadership standpoint in our current environment to the people who in the organization. But organizations need results. It doesn't matter what the organization is. At the end of the day, organizations need results. And as we start to maybe normalize, use that term loosely, as we start to normalize a little bit more, I think there's going to be a shift toward more results. And so I'm curious about how you think this model could be used to help us make that turn.
Right. Well, I think when I hear, and it's a very astute question, Rock, when I think of turn, I think we've always had the balance, right? It's task, the goal, accomplishment, and process, how we feel about the work that we do, the process of the work, and then the delivery, the implementation, getting the widget out or whatever it happens to be, or delivering the service. So I don't think we may be entering a space where we can be even more integrative around that as leaders. It doesn't have to be this or this, it's and. How do we bring these both together to a certain extent? So that's where I think emotional intelligence model, brings us. Because in any emotional intelligence model, there's usually an awareness piece, a knowing, and there is a doing piece. And that can be quite the same as an organization. What do we know about coming back to work? What do we believe or assume or know about all these people, all these humans that we have, human beings coming back into this space, given everything we had, and these noble goals that we're trying to pursue? So for me, I think emotional intelligence brings those two together to a certain extent. There's our ability to empathize, our ability to meet others where they are, relationship management, social awareness, and all of these things are happening in this culture that's trying to pursue these goals. So I think emotional intelligence really fits in here as a leadership development model, as even a behavior, how we behave. So not only do we get better at leaders, but it gives us guidance in saying, hey, these are some behaviors that we can bring together. At least that's how I interpret that question. But again, soapbox moment. If you hear the screeching sound, that's going back under my test.
That's a good point. But in a couple of points on the chat, Leslie notes that, there's not anybody who hasn't been touched by this COVID thing. And so it really is it really is a whole new world for us. And then Di makes a point, again, a good insight. This can be used as a reset for people in a good way. She asked the question, should leaders give their employees a second chance to make a first impression? I think that's an awesome question. And your response, Mike, makes me think that this also applies, I think, not just to downward leadership, but to upward leadership. I think it's an opportunity to make sure we're keeping leaders above us honest about any promises that were made about our culture, about our values, and making sure that as we do, kind of make a turn, if you want to call it that, that we're really staying true to what we've committed in the last few months to the people we work with.
Right. Great comments.
All right, so we got 3 minutes left.
Yes.
I want you to give us a call to action, if you will. Give us a thought or two on the practical ways we can use this model in our leadership. We've seen some in the chat, and I really appreciate that. But what are your thoughts on practically how we can deploy this model in our leadership going forward?
Great question. My suggestion, and I know a few of you are probably going to laugh as I look through the group. I think we have a great opportunity here to move from advocacy into inquiry, or to have, well, maybe not move, have a better balance of that as leaders. So often we come in, here's the, this is what we're going to do. Let's go for it, move forward. This is the direction. I think we're at a point now where we've inquired, we've reached out to folks, how are you feeling? We've created environments where people do feel safe in that work from home, and we've been flexible, and we've met people where they are as best we can within the work environment. And we can continue to do that. And for me, that's where we get into the inquiry, where we may, as leaders, here's the direction we're going, but we've built maybe more collegial relationships because of this pandemic with others. And so we can ask them, what do you think? That's getting to Rock, your comments around transparency and vulnerability. We have a great opportunity here to be transparent. Here's the direction I think as a leader. And I immediately go into vulnerability. Now I'm asking this group that is now, perhaps we moved into a more collegial space. What do you think about this? What are we missing? How can we get there faster to this? What other things can we do? And so that would be a very practical way of that, maybe a different balance of advocacy, which sometimes is more telling, and inquiry, which is bringing others into the conversation. That would be my thought, is to have a different balance of that, and to keep it in front of us, balance of advocacy and inquiry. I want to, go right into question mode, so to speak. So that's where I was headed on with that question. And I'd love to hear some other comments from others around that question.
No, I think that's a great point. It is a real opportunity here that we have to adjust our leadership, help it evolve in a positive direction, and this model can definitely help us do that. So I don't see anything else in the chat, Mike, and we're at 11:30 Pacific, 1:30 your time. So right. I think we're about done. Do you have the next slide you could put up?
Yeah, let me, here we go.
I want to thank you, Mike, for making time for us here. Thank everybody who joined us. We've got our next session, the 15th, which Mike has put up on the screen. We hope you'll join us for that. And as always, we just appreciate what you folks do, and really appreciate Lewis being committed to keeping these sessions going. I'm sure enjoying them. So thanks so much. And we've also got a slide up here to consider a donation for the COVID-19 emergency fund. You can do that at the website, at the website address that's on that slide. So thank you, Mike. You are the Jimmy Fallon of
Thanks, Rock, and thank you for the kind of running the show here. This was great. This was great. I appreciate it so much, and wonderful job. Thanks everyone for the great comments as well.
Yeah. Have a great afternoon.
Take care, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.